Welcome to the Success Sculpting Show with Stephen Pierce, bringing you the right information right now to sculpt a more meaningful and memorable life of success. Join us each week to discover gems to help you grow your mental toughness, expand your will to win, and multiply your results. It's never been easier to learn what to do and how to do it to succeed at what you choose to do. This is truly an experience you won't find anywhere else. Now, here's your host, the Success Sculptor himself, Stephen Pierce.
Welcome. Yes, this is Stephen Pierce, and I want to welcome you to episode number 4 of the Success Sculpting Show with yours truly, Stephen Pierce. And first of all, let me thank everybody for the great feedback. Actually, an overwhelming amount of feedback that we got from episode number 3 on how to never give up. So I thought it would be rather fitting to follow up with the whole idea of never giving up to picking up your overall performance in life. Because if you think about it, listen, if you're going to stay in the game, you might as well master the game, right? It's one thing to never give up. It's another thing to continue to pick up our overall performance in life. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode, episode 4, Peak Performance Secrets. I'm going to give you some tips and some techniques to help you to tweak and fine-tune your life's performance. Because if you think about it, one of the things that we really want to do is we want to give our absolute best to what it is we're doing. Whether we're giving it to a volunteer foundation, whether we are out there doing it for profit, be it with our families, doesn't matter what it is we're doing. Politicians, pastors, business people, moms, dads, daughters, sons, brothers, sisters, you name it. When we're engaged in something, do we look forward to being our absolute worst? Absolutely not. We want to be our best. But there's something that tends to get in the way. It's called friction. Now, we can individually label it, whatever it is we want to label it. But at the end of the day, it's friction, and that friction impedes our overall performance. So what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to look at some things, some really small things that you can do overall that can help to remove that friction, remove those different speed bumps that are on that path that you are on, and help you to pick up your overall performance. So are you ready for it? Well, that's what we're going to be covering in this episode. But before we do, got some voicemail calls in, and I'm not going to play them all for you, but I do want to play one from Jillian. And this was a call that she placed after she listened to episode number 3. So short voicemail. I'm going to play that for you real quick, and then we're going to get on with episode 4. So first, here is Jillian.
Hi, Stephen. My name is Jillian. I just wanted to say I was listening to your broadcast on how to never give up. It was awesome and very, very informative. And keep doing what you're doing. I have that same philosophy. I believe in being like the palm tree, constantly bending but never breaking. I just want you to continue doing what you're doing. It's such a wonderful thing, and it's going to help a lot of people. It definitely helped me to put some things in perspective of what I'm doing in my online business, because I am not giving up. I was in Zeek Rewards, which turned out to be a big problem. But I didn't give up, and I'm not giving up. I'm continuing to market my own business, which I'm really am grateful to people like you and people like Michelangelo, who are very, very positive and keep us moving and telling us the truth about marketing. Thank you, and I just wanted to say keep doing what you're doing. It's very, very informative. It's going to help a lot of people.
All right. I want to thank Jillian for giving us a call. And by the way, for anybody else that would like to give us a call and leave us some feedback on any of the shows, or submit some questions, or even just give us your thoughts, as well as some requests for topics for us to discover, I will give you that number at the end of today's episode. Now, Jillian, it's great to hear that you have not given up. That's good. And you're going to love this episode, staying along the lines of keeping doing what we're doing. And again, I really appreciate your words of encouragement, as well as your appreciation for the content and how to never give up. Because one of the things I believe we all need to understand is that every struggle strengthens us to arrive to what it is we strive for. There's strength in the struggle. We only become weak from the struggle if we decide to become weak from the struggle. Just because we're feeling the weight doesn't mean that we don't become stronger by it. No different than when we go into a gym. If we start to lift heavy weights, sure, it can be stressing on the muscles and it can be an exhausting experience. But what may look like weakness in the moment in the short term is actually building strength over the long term. Also, every tear you shed, it really waters the dreams that you desire. So your tears are never wasted. right? Every warrior bleeds blood into the battlefield of their dreams. And if you're going for a dream, you're a warrior, all right? You may not see yourself like that, but you're a warrior. And I think in the archives of history, and I'm not really too sure what your personal beliefs are, but mine is one based on the Bible and Christianity and Jesus Christ. So for me, in the archives of history, when you think about never giving up, Jesus was battered and bruised. He was betrayed and berated. He was beaten and belittled. He was also lied on and lied to. He was forgotten and forsaken. He was misunderstood and mistreated. And he was followed and then unfollowed. That's kind of like what we have today when you think about social media, people following you and then something happens and then they unfollow you. Anyway, he was lifted up as well as let down. He was popular at the same time unpopular. He was loved at the same time he was hated. He was liked and unliked. Again, along the lines of social media where people will come and like you and then something happens and then they unlike you. At the end of the day, we know he was whipped and crucified, and what looked like the end was really only the beginning. And I say all that to say that no, we're not little messiahs, we're not little gods, and we're not micro Jesuses, but what we are people that can withstand the storms. We are people that if we decide, we can endure whatever is necessary for us to accomplish what it is we want to accomplish. And that is what I mean by never giving up. You'll feel the pain. But if you focus on what it is you want to get to, you can sustain the momentum despite the amount of pain that is there. And that kind of is really important as we look at what we're going to be talking about today. So you decide, you know what, I'm never going to give up. And that's great. Now, what do? We're never going to give up. We're not going to give in. So how do we go about improving our overall performance? And that's what we're going to be talking about and looking at in today's episode. Now, this episode will probably be the last episode, at least for a while, that will pull some content from the previous live video stream that we did. So we're going to do that again. And then in episode 5, I have something completely different for you. But in this episode, for another time, we're going to go and extract some various nuggets from that live stream, which will ultimately make up the various tips and techniques to help you to tweak and fine-tune your life performance. In other words, let's take a look at some peak performance secrets. We're going to go to some segments from the live stream, and I'll be right back with you the moment we're done. Now, let's talk about proper orientation and perspective. How you're looking at the situation is going to determine what it means to you. Now, here's the interesting thing. Who controls your perspective? You do. You can allow people to influence your perspective, but you're the one that ultimately controls your perspective. So while you control it, who are you allowing to influence it? You do control your perspective, but who are we allowing to correctly or incorrectly influence our perspectives and how we're looking at things? Because good or bad, is it really a part of the situation, or is it a part of the perspective of the person looking at the situation? I'm willing to say it's a part of the perspective of the person looking at the situation, okay? So you only experience the stress in the situation if you interpret the situation as being stressful. People are like, no, it's a stressful situation. Right, because that's how you see it. You see it as a stressful situation. Now, I'm not saying that we don't experience stress, because we do. And the body has a stress response. We can pretty much condition different responses to stress. It's no different than a player and an athlete. They could experience stress, having to make that pass, make that shot, hit that ball, knock in that run. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we are using first of all, that we're aware of the different advantage points that we can use to see something through, instead of being stuck at this one viewpoint that's negative, that undermines what it is you want to do, and that sabotages your forward progress. We do not want to default to those types of positions, okay? So to not default to those positions means we need to be aware of other angles in which we can view something. And one angle of being able to view it is one that is devoid of stress. Because, for example, you're looking at something, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so stressful. But then it's like, how would this situation look if there was no stress? Okay, first of all, you can control your mind. You can ask yourself whatever questions you want to ask yourself. But how would this situation look if it had no stress?
In other words, right there, you just change in your mind what the situation looks like. Here, let me give you an example, okay? So you have two people, same situation, different responses. Let's say two people want to start a business, and both of them are having no progress, no success whatsoever. Now, you have one person that says, let's just quit. Let's stop. This is not going to work. This is just not going to work. But then another one with the same program, same opportunity, in the same situation says, hey, let's try this differently because this hasn't worked yet. Let me tell you something. One of the most powerful words you can ever add to any phrase is the word yet. For example, for those of you out there that have been wanting to lose weight and you kind of feel as if it's hopeless. It's like the weight is like stuck to you forever, you feel. But change it to not, I haven't lost 100 pounds. I wanted to lose 100 pounds. I didn't lose 100 pounds, which is really negative and it reinforces the negativity. Two, I haven't lost 100 pounds yet. Say that and write that out. Let me tell you something. That one change of putting comma yet. For example, you want to run a successful business. Man, I've tried all these different things, all these different network marketing companies, all these different internet plans. It's like, and I haven't been able to start a successful company. But then you say, I haven't been able to start a successful company yet. I'm telling you that one thing yet. And here's the reason why. Because if you say you haven't been able to start a successful company, it almost gives a finality to it, where it's like it's final. But when you say you haven't been able to do it yet, it's like the process is still moving, it's ongoing, and there's still hope, which, by the way, is pretty much a precursor to faith. A lot of people are like, you got to have faith. You got to have faith. Well, let me tell you something. Even the Bible says faith is the substance of things hoped for. People are talking about, you got to have faith. You got to have faith. But let me tell you something. You will have a very, very hard time getting a person to have faith that has no hope. And even from a scriptural standpoint, faith is a product of something. Faith is substance of something that is hoped for. Now, where do we get our hope from? Well, remember that vision and mission we talked about? That inspiration, that thing that you are aspiring to? Guess what that gives you? Gives you hope. No matter what's going on around you, that gives you hope. And that hope gives birth to the faith. And you will ride that horse of faith, for lack of a better metaphor, every single day in the face of detractors, in the face of the oppressors, in the face of the opposition, in the face of everything. But to not have hope almost makes it impossible to have faith. But yet we bypass hope and tell people, you got to have faith. We need to understand more holistically how these things work together, at least I believe. Because I think a lot of times we look at things myopically and we segregate them. We have faith here, motivation, and all these individual pieces, and we hand them out to people with assembly required, yet no instructions on how to assemble them. So in a world that basically is overflowing with self-help and personal development material, you have a more helpless society. In a world of self-esteem, you have more selfish people and self-serving people. Because I believe that the entire message gets mixed up and it gets messed up in how it's delivered as well as how it's received. And then if the message is messed up in its delivery and is mixed up in how it's received, it becomes mangled by the person using it. Anyway, that's just my perspective, right? And speaking of perspectives, we'll stick with another thing on perspectives. They're like glasses, right? And you may want to write this one down. If you can't see clearly, then you have on the wrong lenses. You ever put on somebody else's glasses to see what it's like? And you're just like, whoa, you blinded in the bed in daylight. You ever had that? You ever put somebody else and your eyes be hurting? It's like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Right? You ever had that happen before? Listen, if what you're looking at and what you see is blurry, change your lens, change your perspective. Just change it. Change your altitude, change your perspective, change your paradigm. All of those are things that you control. You're not stuck with the glasses like, oh, this is the lens that they gave me. No, you can control your lens. The situation itself may be the same, but you can control and change the lens that you use to view them. Nobody's forcing you to wear those glasses where you can't see anything or what you see is cloudy or blurry. You have the opportunity to change the lens. So change the lens, right? Switching your perspective of the situation is much better than stressing the situation. Stressing is kind of like the de facto standard and default thing that we tend to do. What's that? Oh, stress. That's it. Oh, stress. But you got to understand, stress isn't like a cold. It's not something you catch. Stress is something that we do. I mean, it's not like, ooh, what you doing? Oh, I'm not feeling well. I just caught this stress thing. No, man, that's not how it happens. It wasn't like, well, your friend was stressing out and he sneezed on you and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you caught stress. No, stress is something that we do. And one of the first ways we can stop doing stress is to change the environment where stress breeds. Like there's certain environments that breed rats. There's certain environments that breed cancer. So the point here is understand what breeds stress inside of you and what breeds stress in your environment, and make sure you don't breed it. Make sure that you don't have the environment there that will create it. Understand your environment and what it breeds and what it creates, and make sure you don't produce an environment that is going to create something that you don't want. Now, for those that continue to experience stress, let's look at how to be your stress best while under stress. Not how to be your stress, but how to be your best while under stress. The first one is prepare for the stressor. And this is really about how you talk to yourself, right? And here's a piece of language. It's going to be rough. Keep your cool. And remember, this is not about being negative. This is about being truthful. It's like, hey, for example, if you're flying in a plane and the pilot comes on talking about, we're about to fly through a pocket of turbulence. It's going to get pretty rough. So please make sure you remain seated and you have your seatbelt on. You don't go, can we get a more positive pilot in here? Why he got to be so negative? No, it's like, thank you for that, right? He's not being negative. He's being honest. He's telling you we're about to hit a pocket of turbulence and it's going to get rough, right? He's not negative. So being honest with yourself, and it goes back to the whole thing about truth versus positives and negatives. See, I tend to avoid people that live superficially through this whole thing of negatives and positives and attracting, oh, well, we don't want to attract negatives and we want to attract positives. You want me to tell you something? I just want the truth. It doesn't matter how it's packaged. I want to live through a lens of truth, not through a lens of feeling good positives, and let's avoid the dark side of the negatives, because that's a trap within itself. We want to live through truth. The pilot says there's going to be turbulence. Appreciate the heads up. You know what I mean? We appreciate the heads up, right? So this right here about talking to yourself is kind of giving yourself a truthful heads up. Hey, this is going to be rough, so keep your cool. All right. Now, the second thing you would do is look at how you can control and handle the stressor. So you'd be like, keep your cool, since getting upset is not going to help. Now, imagine how that would help us in different situations. Again, this goes back to the think and respond, which is the feel versus the feel and react scenario that I told you. This really right here is about thinking and responding, okay, as opposed to feeling and reacting, because the feel and react is upset, oh, and it's just blind fury from there on out. And then all of a sudden, after you cool down, you're doing all the thinking. It's just like, did I really do that? Did I say that? You want to give yourself the space and the delay to, one, take control of the emotional responses and allow yourself to start to think more clearly. Because listen, emotions always cloud judgment. It always clouds judgment. Right? It's kind of like the countless number of guys that would have never slept with a woman unprotected, that in that one instance, they end up catching HIV because they allowed their emotions in that moment to cloud their judgment. How many times have you allowed your emotion to cloud your judgment? And we don't want to live through a lens of regret, but you could live through a lens of regret because you allowed yourself to be overtaken with a tsunami of emotions. The thing that we want to do is we want to know that can happen. Listen, if we don't take control of the flood of these emotions that will come in, and they will always come in, that's the whole thing. Your body is just designed to react to stuff. For example, if you were to put your hand on a hot stove, the way your body is designed is instantaneously, faster than you can even think, hot. You don't touch it and be like, I think that's kind of hot. I think that's going to burn me if I keep my hand here. No, listen, your body just has a response. One of the things we want to be able to do is catch those emotional reactions, okay? We want to catch those emotional reactions and bridge enough space. We want to wedge in there enough space for us to deposit thoughtfulness, to be able to think. Otherwise, it creates a disaster. I've been there plenty of times. A slave to feelings, not controlling your mind, living under a cloud of depression for years, feeling trapped in my own environment, a slave to the people around me, completely out of my mind. I know what that's like. Here's the one thing that I know. It doesn't disappear by itself. You don't wake up one day and be like, I'm free. No, you work your way through that over and over and over again. And that's one reason why I never belittle anybody's anything. And it's like, you have a drug addiction? Oh my gosh. And it's like, you feel much bigger to this person with the drug addiction. They're so small. How can you have a drug addiction? You do what? Oh, you deserve to die in OD using those drugs. Because we tend to place other addictions, alcohol addictions and drug addictions, in a certain category. But yet your addiction to food, your addiction to anger, your addiction to television, your addiction to sex, your addiction to video games, your addiction to gossip, your addiction to negativity is somehow smaller than an addiction to drugs. They're all equally destructive. An addiction is an addiction. It is being captive by something and being controlled by it. And we all have our different addictions, and we want to be free from it. Dealing with your feelings of being overwhelmed. What do you say to yourself? Listen, let's keep focused. What do I need to do next? Let's keep focused. What do I need to do next? Let me tell you something. One of the most powerful focusing questions, first of all, whenever things seem to just get harebrained for me and all over the place, I just say here, now, and it's not here as in hearing, but here as in right here. I just bring it all back in. It's like here, now, this. That's it. Because I know there's all this other stuff that's going to tug on you and pull on you. And you don't want to be, hypothetically speaking, the person that's tied at wrists and ankles to 4 horses about to take off in different directions. So it's here, now, this. I'm right here in this right now moment, focusing on this that's in front of me. That allows you to take control of your focus, which is very important. And then simply ask yourself the question, what's next? What's next? That helps you to navigate your focus. Because remember, focus is something to be controlled, or it will become under the control of something else, namely your emotions. That whatever the thing is that sparks the greatest intensity of emotion is going to be the thing that grabs your attention and your focus. So that's why we need to bring our focus back in. And the fourth thing you can do is evaluate your efforts and congratulate yourself. You handled yourself well. Great job. Which, by the way, you need to celebrate yourself. Maybe the Bible talks about encourage yourself. How many times do we encourage ourselves? There's so many people around you that are out to try to demean you and to demoralize you and discourage you. Don't try to seek encouragement for them, because what happens is if you're only feeling encouraged based on what other people say to you, then you will become equally discouraged based on what other people say to you or about you. Now, don't get me wrong. No man or a woman is an island unto him or herself, but we need to know how to be able to sustain ourselves self-sufficiently based on what we know about ourselves, not what other people think they know about you. And we certainly need to know how to define ourselves. First of all, I define myself based on what God says about me, not what other people say about me. And you should be the exact same way. Know who you are, live the truth about yourself, and however those chips may fall around those that are around you, just let them fall. That's it. Don't go around trying to defend who you are to get people to like you. No one person on this planet has everybody liking them. It's not going to happen. Forget about it. But the whole thing is this. I don't mind people disliking me. That's par for the course. That's life. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't hurt my feelings, whatever. I don't mind people talking bad about me. It doesn't bother me. That's just par for the course. It is what it is. But the thing that I would like is if you dislike me, dislike the truth about me. Don't dislike me based on lies about me. That's it. That's it. Everybody's not going to be my friend. Everybody's not going to be your friend. Be okay with that. Just be okay with that. No, it's just like, I am who God says I am. I'm made in the image of God. I can do what God says I can do. I can do all things through Christ Jesus who strengthens me. These are my confessions, right? I can create what God says I can create. I've been given the power to create wealth. When it's conflict time, bottom line is, blessed be the Lord my strength that teaches my hands to war, my fingers to fight. You can find peace, but sometimes it's like, peace is on the other side of combat. But what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to define yourself, not let other people define you. Oh, because there's plenty of people out there that would love to define you for you. Because if you don't give yourself a definition, other people will. Understand and encourage yourself. What do you do to encourage yourself? One thing I encourage every single one of you to do, especially if I know you can do this if you have your iPhone, is set your alarms. Right? You know how you can set your alarm on your iPhone and your alarm can give you a message? Like when I first got into health and fitness and I needed to remember to take my supplements at different times, I set all my alarms on my cell phone so that the alarm would pop up and tell me, hey, take this protein shake. Hey, do this. And then I just kind of caught on to the idea and I would put encouraging messages to myself on my cell phone. And every morning when my cell phone goes off, I have a 3 o'clock alarm, I have a 4 a.m. alarm, and it gives me something positive for myself for the day. Not defined by anybody else, defined by me. You articulate to yourself what is a message you want to give to yourself and schedule your messages. Let's just say you wrap up your day at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. 7 o'clock, you can have a message come to yourself. Have a message that comes to yourself that gives you encouraging words for the day. It's not based on anything else other than, because you got to remember this, and this is something I really want you to get. The message you give to yourself is not going to be based on your performance, but it will help your performance. And here's what I mean. If the message is based on your performance and you had a horrible day, what are you going to say to yourself? You suck, let's do better tomorrow. Or even if you say, hey, you tried your hardest, it didn't work out, let's go get them tomorrow. There's still a performance implication in there. I want you to create messages for yourself that are all before performance, that are all before every label that somebody gave you. It's like when I'm coaching people and they tell me, for example, like they're dealing with depression, because I've been there, I know what that's like. And I'll always ask one question, and you can ask yourself this question, and you can ask anybody this question if you're coaching with them or you're having a conversation with them, and they come across with this label, right? Like, oh, they're so fat, or they're ugly, or they're depressed, or they're whatever it is. Always ask them, for example, in this case, well, who were you before the depression? Who were you before the depression? So what I do is I get them to move away from this false label about themselves. Because remember, we put these labels on ourselves, and then what we do is we live our lives through those labels and those lenses. So in other words, a person that labels themselves as depressed will live a depressed life. Everything will come through this depressed lens. A person that sees themselves as forever fat and forever overweight or forever broke will always see themselves through that particular lens. So the thing that I try to do is constantly remove them away from that lens. So they'll say, for example, even if they say some good things about themselves, like let's say, so who are you before the depression? Well, first of all, they try to wrap their mind around what do I mean by that? It's like, so who are you before you're depressed? Who are you before you're depressed? And they'll go, well, I'm this person. They'll say their name. Okay, well, who are you before you're that? And one person I was talking to went all the way to, well, I'm a baby. I'm my mother's baby. It's like, and then it's like, well, who are you before your mama's baby? She's like, well, she was in the womb. It's like, well, who are you before you're in your womb? And before you were in the womb. And it's basically your pure potential. That's it. You no constraints, no labels, no can't do's, no people you're trying to please, no people you're trying to impress, none of that stuff. You're just pure, unadulterated potential before you become captive to the ideas of the parents and you become a slave to their belief systems. If we can get back to who we are before all these different labels, we can perform. That's why the labels are before the performance. If we can get back to who we are before we place the labels on ourselves, and I know that can seem like a tall order, but we can get there, because when you're feeling something, it's like, who am I before this feeling? Who am I before this feeling? And I do that all the time. Who am I before this feeling? Who am I before this? Who am I before this? To try to go back to the true essence of how God created me.
So I guess that is a really good question. Who are you? Who are you? Not who you are you based on what families say or what the teacher says or what the ex-spouse says or your inner circle says, or even what you say based on your different life influences or circumstances or environments. Who are you when you remove yourself from that, when you remove yourself from the things that taint the pool of your thinking, when you remove yourself from all the things that pollute your vision? Who are you really? You will start to see that at the purity of your essence, unrestrained, no restrictions given to us by you can do this and you can't do that. And I'm talking about restrictions by law, restrictions by class, whether that be racial class or religious class. No restrictions whatsoever. Who are you? If you can find yourself there, I believe you will identify with who you really are. Because when we're brought up in this world, we got to remember, I mean, all of a sudden, our parents thinking, be it right or wrong, doesn't even matter. We become shaped, we become sculpted, we become molded by their life experiences. Their fears all of a sudden start to become our fears for the most part, until we get to the point where it's like, well, I'm not going to fear that. Our personalities are really becoming poisoned by the personalities that are around us. And when I say poisoned, I mean, you can pick up some good traits from people and some bad traits from people. But what I mean by being poisoned is that it's a toxin in your system because it's not you. When you have a foreign substance in your body that is not you, that is not necessarily a good thing. Unless it's a heart replacement or an organ replacement, then maybe all of a sudden it may be a good thing. But isn't it true that when people go through organ replacements, but the body will reject the organ? That does happen. There's like an organ failure and it doesn't necessarily work. And at the same time, not anybody can take anybody's organ, right? But all that kind of stuff aside, the point that you want to get to is where you are able to have a clear set of lenses that you're using to look at yourself through. And I know that can kind of seem like a tall order, but what we need to do is just become disassociated. We are so associated to what is going on in our lives from an emotional standpoint and what people think about us and what people say about us and all this other kind of stuff that sometimes we can't even breathe. We need to allow ourselves to remove ourselves from the clutches of that constriction that blinds us to the truth of ourselves, and it deafens us to the truth of ourselves, and it suffocates us from being able to really breathe the essence of a life that we both deserve and we also desire. But even though we desire it, we don't really see that there's a way to get to it. And there really is a way to get to it. I believe one of the first ways to get to it so that you can experience that level of peak performance that you want and that you desire and that you actually deserve is that we have to allow ourselves to be removed from all the different labels of self-worth. You're worth this or you're not worth this. All the different comparisons that we tend to make with ourselves where people are worse than us or better than us. All the different things that will make you feel good if you come out on top of the comparison or feel bad if you come out on the short end of the comparison. And as far as I'm concerned, none of the comparisons make any sense because God didn't set one man or one woman up as the ruler by which we all should be measured by. So when you go and you measure yourself to somebody by somebody else's standard and it's like, oh man, I'm better than this person. So now you have this false sense of superiority. You may feel superior, but it's still a false sense of superiority because next thing you know, you're compared to somebody else. Either you do it or somebody else does it. And now they're better than you. And all of a sudden now you have this false sense of inferiority. And it's still a false sense. That's not how we want to derive our self-worth. That's not how we want to go about doing it. It's not just to them and it's not just to you. And it has you to totally miss who you really are. Now, I know we live in a world where everything seems to be comparisons. There's all over movies, there's all over televisions, there's all over the magazines. There's always comparisons, cars, homes, bank accounts, clothes, physiques, face, hair, watches, you name it. There's all kind of comparisons. But just because other people are comparing doesn't mean you have to participate or allow any third person's comparisons to influence how you view yourself and feel about yourself. You don't have to volunteer your emotions. You don't have to volunteer your identity to be a participant in those type of comparisons that really, for the most part, leave you as damaged goods. And you're not really damaged, but you might as well be because of the way you view yourself. Right? It's like looking at a mirror that's cracked. You see a fractured picture of yourself. But if you get yourself from out of that fractured mirror, you're not fractured at all. You're not fractured in the least bit. So we have to watch how we're going about looking at ourselves. Do not give somebody else the power to put in front of you a lens that you should see yourself through. You decide how you're going to see yourself. You do that, okay? That's on you. And you might as well do it in such a way where it helps you, not hurts you. It serves you and doesn't sabotage you because it doesn't make any sense. I want to be my absolute best. But, whoa, all of a sudden you're looking at all these things that hurt your performance and they sabotage your performance. And remember, we're the ones doing it. I don't care what is put in place, was placed in front of us. You don't have to eat every meal that is slid in front of you, do you? In fact, I'm sure you don't, right? How many times have you been to a buffet, right? Buffets used to be fun for me, but now I think about it, it's like nothing good happens at a buffet. You know what I mean? It's like the moment I'm about to hit a buffet, I'm just like, everybody knows that nothing good is going to come out of this thing, right? So let's just be ready to implode as a result of going into this buffet and just tackling it. And the buffet always wins. You tend to tap out because you ain't going to eat everything. Right. But anyway, you go into a buffet, and you pick and choose. You pick and choose what looks appealing to you. Right. Is that true? You pick and choose what you like. Now, if you don't want the fish that's boiled and you want the fried fish, you go and get the fried fish. Right. Or if it's the opposite, you don't want no fried fish. You want the boiled fish or broiled fish. Or baked fish. Well, you just don't want the fried fish. You want a better or more healthy cooked fish. That's what you go get. See, in life, we are presented with a buffet of choices on how to view ourselves, how to feel about ourselves, etc. But unfortunately, people tend to go and pick the stuff that is bad for them, that doesn't taste good, that doesn't feel good, and it really poisons them. That's like you going to a buffet and having your choice of beverages. It's like, you know what? I think I'm going to have the cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. I don't think so. In history, we know that people did that because they were completely deceived and misled. But don't you go to a buffet drinking anybody's Kool-Aid that's laced with cyanide. In other words, don't you live your life accepting and being intoxicated on and being drunk on people's lies about you. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to your family. Don't do that to your legacy. You deserve better than that. Your future deserves better than that. All right, so we're going to wrap up this episode of the Success Sculpting Show. Now, I would love to hear back from you on any of the previous episodes or even on this episode on Peak Performance Secrets. Now, were these all the Peak Performance Secrets? Come on. If they were, we couldn't have another episode. It was just a handful to get you started. And I can assure you is, God willing, we'll have a whole lot more episodes and be sharing a whole lot more peak performance secrets and tips and insights and strategies and tactics and techniques with you. Now, I would love to hear back from you. If you would like to leave a voicemail, as Jillian and many others have done, you can give me a call at 781-277-7469. Again, that's 781-277-7469. Or send me an email at feedback@successsculpting.com. That's feedback@successsculpting.com. And our next episode has something pretty interesting for you. You know that old saying, I'm falling, but I can't get up? Well, in episode number 5, if you're falling, I'm going to give you 5 steps to getting up. How does that sound? If you're falling and you want to get up, in episode 5, I'm sorry, that would be episode 4. No, that would be episode 5. That would be episode 5. And that's a great match. Episode 5, you get 5 steps on how to get up if you're falling. All right? So until then.
Thanks for listening to the Success Sculpting Show with Stephen Pierce. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, successsculptingshow.com, to your friends and colleagues. Be sure to check out our archives of previous podcasts and check the schedule to join us for our next live streaming Success Sculpting Show webcast. This has been a Success Sculpting Incorporated production. Join us next time for another edition of the Success Sculpting Show with Stephen Pierce, and tell your friends.